is not forgotten.
Thank you, Senator Smith. And I call Senator Scarr.
Thank you, Madam Acting Deputy President. Before I start on my contribution, I'd like to associate myself with the remarks of Senator Smith in that regard. And indeed, I think it is a great thing that this country, with the support of both governing parties, has adopted the definition of anti-Semitism set out by the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance. And I think that is a very, very positive thing. And we should be proud of that unity. Madam Acting Deputy President, I'm going to speak about a place in Queensland called Ipswich. And as I was thinking about this and about to get up in my remarks, and I was hoping to grab your attention too, Senator Watt, I was thinking there's some similarities in terms of the infrastructure requirements of Ipswich as there is in the Central Coast of New South Wales. You've got a large population who needs to travel quite often to the Central Business District or to, in your case, Sydney. I should say in your case as the previous member for Robertson. And then in the case of Ipswich, you've got a big population, a growing population that needs to travel to the capital of Queensland, namely Brisbane. So I'm pleased you're in the chair to hear my remarks in this respect. I'm also pleased Senator Watt's here to hear my remarks. And I'm always pleased Senator Cicconi's here. I mean, it's just a pleasure to have him around. So it's been a great thing that today, and I know they had some meeting with the Minister's office, that there was a delegation from the great city of Ipswich that came to Canberra to make some representations to both sides of politics in relation to, amongst other things, Ipswich to Springfield Central Public Transport Corridor. And I'd first like to acknowledge the members of the delegation, namely the Deputy Mayor of Ipswich City Council, Jacob Madsen, Councillor Sheila Ireland, Mr Dan Heenan from the Public Administration of Ipswich City Council, a Representative Sekisui House, Mr Taku Hashimoto, and Sekisui House is the developer of one of Queensland's fastest growing suburbs called Ripley. And lastly, actually, two more representatives, Representative of Multicultural Australia, Ms Christine Castley, and I should note Ipswich has a very, very large multicultural community, and the President of the Ipswich Show Society, Mr Darren Zarnow, who has just done a tremendous job as President of that show society. So congratulations to the delegation, and I'm sure their representations to other members of this place and the lower house was as persuasive as the representations that they made to me. But their representations fell on fertile ground when it came to this senator, and in particular their representations with respect to the necessity for the Ipswich to Springfield Central Public Transport Corridor. And I was very, very pleased that prior to the last federal election, both the previous government, through its decision and input into the South East Queensland City deal, and the opposition, the then opposition and now government, supported $10 million being allocated for studies for the Ipswich to Springfield Central Public Transport Corridor. And I just want to outline why this is such an important piece of infrastructure and why this needs to be built as quickly as possible. And as I said, Madam Acting Deputy President, I'm sure you'll be able to draw analogies with your area on central New South Wales coast. Well, now your area is the whole of New South Wales, of course. So in the strategy paper in 2020, which was released in relation to this proposal, and I just want to quote from it, "Connectivity and transport inequality is creating disadvantage across Ipswich. Ipswich is currently serviced by 2 heavy rail lines and several suburban bus lines. The rail lines are not connected, and only one of the bus services provided in Ipswich is high frequency. The existing public transport provision in the Ipswich local government area is not servicing the region efficiently, with close to 40% of residents dissatisfied with the available public transport services." So what does this mean in practice? And when you consider the arithmetic in this regard, it is quite profound. In the strategy paper, and I quote, $1.4 billion per annum congestion problem. That's what's quoted in relation to this congestion problem. The impact of not delivering critical new transport infrastructure is demonstrated in the cost of the problem analysis. It found that the estimated cost of total congestion in the study area would be $466 million per year in 2026, rising to $1.4 billion per year in 2036. So just reflect on that. This is the cost as a result of congestion, cars on roads, because the public transport is not sufficient to service the growing population in the Ipswich region. And that congestion cost is predicted to rise to $1.4 billion per year in 2036 if nothing is done. So that is why it is so pleasing that in the South East Queensland City deal, on page 23, there's a reference to the $10 million of commitment from three levels of government and from both major parties in this country, which is a great thing. And I'd like to personally take this opportunity to also acknowledge the role that the Honourable Paul Fletcher played in terms of ensuring that this Springfield to Ipswich transport corridor was contained in the South East Queensland City Plan. So thank you very, very much. I went through the presentation which was delivered by the representatives from Ipswich City earlier today, and it is just profound when you look at the growth in population that is occurring in this area of Queensland, this wonderful area of Queensland, which Senator Ayres should take the opportunity to visit as soon as possible. I'm sure he'll be extremely impressed with this area of Queensland. And just to let you know the figures in relation to population and job growth in this, the fastest growing city in Queensland, it is estimated that between 2011 and 2041 there will be an extra 416,000 people in this region, nearly 500,000 extra people in this region, and an extra 65,000 jobs. So this is one of the fastest growing areas in Queensland, but it needs infrastructure to support that growth. After I was elected as a senator, at the earliest opportunity, I escaped from the central business district of Brisbane to move my office to one of the fastest growing areas of Australia, namely the Ipswich region. My office is in a wonderful place called Springfield in Queensland, Springfield City. Everyone's invited to come along and visit me in Springfield. It's a great place. And the reason I did that was so I had a better appreciation of the issues facing the people in what we refer to as the southwest corridor of Queensland, the fastest growing region in Queensland. And when you speak to the people, the local residents, they tell you, what do you need? What do you need? More roads, more rail, more bridges. Road, rail and bridges. They're the issues. Infrastructure, transport infrastructure is what the people need. And if we're going to provide opportunities for young families to buy homes at affordable prices, we need to develop and provide the infrastructure in regions like Ipswich. So the Ipswich Central to Springfield Central public transport corridor is a crucial piece of infrastructure. There are actually 9 stations that would be constructed between Ipswich Central and Springfield Central to close that rail loop in this part of Queensland. And I'd also like to make it clear that it is so important for the people of Ipswich to have the same opportunities to access services, to access jobs, to access study as other people in Queensland have, and they need the public transport to actually assist in that endeavour. I would like to pay my regards to Multiculture Australia for their work in relation to the Red Bank Plains Community Centre. Multicultural Australia has actually done a great job in terms of promoting what's referred to as the Red Bank Plains Community Centre. That community centre provides a great service to the people of Red Bank Plains. In their social impact assessment of that area, they found that some of the major issues were limited public transport, isolation and mental health pressures, financial pressures, pressures of rapid growth. That's why they need this infrastructure. And lastly, I'd also like to pay tribute to the wonderful president of the Ipswich Show Society, as I said, President Darren Zarnow, and they have a proposal to actually construct a convention centre on the Ipswich Showgrounds, which would be connected by this public transport corridor. And I think that's an idea that deserves a lot of close attention. So it's great. It was wonderful to see the delegation from Ipswich. They presented their case well, and let's get the Ipswich to Springfield transport